Good morning, Jack. It's June 2nd, and it's 7:18 a.m. I didn't sleep much. That's becoming a boring thing to say, isn't it? I'm starting to bore myself, Jack. I could hear it when I talk to you. How every morning it's the same thing. I didn't sleep, and I had a dream, and something hurts. Something was strange, or something was standing too close, or not standing where it should have been at all. I should start lying just to keep the both of us interested. Good morning, Jack. I slept beautifully, and I woke up so well rested, so soft and normal. The birds were singing, and my coffee tastes like coffee, and my ankles look like ankles, and not like somebody left fingerprints under my flesh. There. That was nice, wasn't it? Anyway, I didn't sleep, Jack. I kept thinking about what Gordon said. I know I shouldn't, and I know that's what he wants. People like him say things like that because they want to crawl inside your head and sit there with their muddy boots up on the furniture. They want you turning every sweet thing over and over in your hands until you've rubbed the shine off of it. I hate saying it out loud. It sounds worse in my voice than it did in his. Maybe because when he said it, it sounded like something being delivered. Like a message that had been written down somewhere else, and he was just the one unfortunate enough to bring it to my window. He is not a messenger, Jack. He is Gordon. He is the strange little man at the steelhead who stares too long and stands too still and says awful things to women in parking lots after dark. That's all he is. Denis's hands were kind to me. They were. I know what kindness feels like. I'm not stupid. God, listen to me. I hate this. I hate that I'm sitting here in my kitchen in my nightgown defending a married man's hands to a tape recorder. I have the dinner shift tonight, Jack, which means I have the whole day to sit around and think myself into something ugly before I even have to put my uniform on, and that feels dangerous. No one should leave me alone with my own head this long. It starts making things, and it starts taking perfectly ordinary thoughts and dressing them up in wet clothes and leaving them in corners. Anka isn't here. I checked the porch when I woke up. His towel is still there, folded a little at one corner from the wind, and his food bowl is still near the door. There are a few pieces left in it, swollen soft from the damp air, but he isn't there. I called for him once quietly, and then a little louder, and then I felt stupid and stopped. Cats disappear. That's practically half of being a cat. They come and go, and they look a little insulted when you ask where they've been, as if having a concern for another living creature is an embarrassing habit that I should have grown out of. Still, I don't like it. The penny is gone too, finally. I don't know what happened to it. Now there's just a darker round spot on the porch board where it used to be, like the wood remembers it. I stood there looking at the little circle for too long. I'm going to go try to eat something. I'm going to go try to be normal and try very hard not to think about hands today. I'll talk to you later, Jack. Jack, it's 1:06 p.m. I went into town. I needed aspirin and some cigarettes, which I know you would have given me a look for if you were here, but you're not. So I get to be a little self-destructive without commentary. It's not raining today, and it's not sunny either. The sky has that flat white-gray look it gets sometimes, where everything underneath it looks a little too exposed. I don't like days like this, Jack. The light makes everyone look tired. I took the old church road into town because I didn't feel like passing the steelhead. Not because I'm afraid, just because I'm tired of giving certain places the satisfaction of being noticed. There was a deer dead off of the shoulder near the bend. Not fresh, but not really old either. It was laying on its side with its legs folded in wrong, like it tried to kneel and then changed its mind halfway down. One of its eyes was open. I tried not to look at it too long because dead animals always make me feel guilty even when I have nothing to do with it. But somebody had put flowers around it, Jack. That's why I slowed down. Not bouquets or little plastic-wrapped grocery store kind that people leave on the side of the highway with teddy bears and candles and sad little ribbons. These were wildflowers, and they were all upside down, Jack. Every single one of them. The stems sticking straight up, petals pressed into the dirt around the deer like they were being made to pray. I actually pulled over. I don't know why. I sat there with the engine running, and I stared at it through the windshield. A truck passed by me, and the driver didn't slow down, He didn't even look. He didn't do anything that made me feel less alone with the dead deer and its little upside-down garden. Maybe it was kids. Kids do strange things, Jack. People in Cedar Bend do strange things when they're bored. Boredom here is practically a craft project. Give someone enough rain and nowhere to go, and they will start building little rituals out of flowers and roadkill and call it a joke. That's all it was. It was a joke. A disgusting one maybe, but still, it was a joke, right? I didn't get out of the car. I thought about it. I thought about turning one of the flowers right side up. Just one. But then I thought maybe that was exactly the sort of thing you shouldn't do. Not because I believe in any of that. I don't. I drove away, and I got my aspirin, and I got the cigarettes. I went and got coffee, even though I had coffee at home, because sometimes coffee made by someone else feels a bit more medicinal. I looked for Anka on the way back, which is stupid. He's a cat. He doesn't take the roads into town to run errands. But I looked anyway. I didn't see him. I need to start getting ready for work soon. My ankles are hurting, like they want attention. I don't have any attention to spare. I'll talk to you after my shift, Jack. Jack, it's 10:41 p.m. I'm home. I haven't taken off my uniform yet. I came in, locked the door, and I checked the porch for Anka. And I just sort of stood in the kitchen with my purse still on my shoulder, like I'd forgotten how houses work. Anka's still gone, and the bowl's there, and the towel's there, and I hate how much it bothers me how empty everything seems. Work was strange. Not the loud kind of strange or dramatic strange. Nobody came in covered in river mud, and no one screamed. No lights burst, and no one dragged wet hands across the windows. So I suppose by recent standards it was almost peaceful. But it was strange. Rosemary wasn't there. She called in again. Suzanne said her voice sounded rough on the phone, like she had a sore throat maybe, or like she'd been crying. Suzanne didn't say that last part. I did. In my own head. That's the problem with thinking too much. You start finishing other people's sentences with things they never meant to say. Dinner was slow, the kind of slow that makes the whole diner feel staged. The tables and the ketchup bottles and the napkin dispensers were all waiting for something to begin, but they didn't know their cues yet. A family passing through came in around 6. 2 adults and a little girl with one of those plastic bead necklaces you win out of machines. She kept chewing on it, and her mother kept telling her to stop. The little girl stared at me every time I passed by. Not like Gordon, though, not even like a creepy child from a movie or something. Just with this blank, curious little face. Then when I set their check down, she said, "You have dirt on your shoe." I looked down, and there was nothing on my shoe. Her mother laughed and said, "Oh, she's been saying odd things all day, don't worry." Like that explained anything. Or maybe it did. Children are strange. Maybe everyone just forgets because they're small and sticky, and sometimes they're kinda cute. I was glad when they left, though. After that, it was just regulars. Mrs. Gardner came in, and she had a salad, but she picked through it as if she was searching for a buried secret. Mr. Nemec came in for coffee and pie. Cherry, as usual. He told me Denis finished his truck this morning and that he did a good job. And then he winked at me like that was supposed to mean something more than the fact that his truck now started properly. I pretended not to understand the wink. I'm getting good at that. Frederick was in the kitchen tonight. Frederick with just the K. I know I've explained that before, but I still feel like you should appreciate how ridiculous it is that the Junko has 2 cooks named basically the same thing. Frederick with just a K always looks like he has heard bad news 5 minutes before he walked in. Maybe he has, or maybe that's just his face. He was scraping burnt cheese off of the grill, and I was putting in an order for a BLT, with no tomato, which I think should be illegal, but people have the right to ruin their own sandwiches, I guess. But Frederick said, "Shame about Denis's wife," out of the blue and casual, as if he was saying shame about the weather. I stopped and I looked at him with maybe too sharp of a stare. I don't think he noticed at first. Or he did notice, and he did what people do here, which is keep doing whatever ordinary thing their hands were doing so the terrible sentence has somewhere normal to land. I said, Lila? As if Denis had another wife tucked away somewhere. Frederick made this little sound. It wasn't really a laugh, and it wasn't a sigh. He just pushed air through his nose. He said, yeah, taking off like that. I felt sick so fast it was almost impressive. A cold, mean little knot grew in my stomach, heavy and large. I said, she left? And Frederick looked over at me then, only for a second. He had the scraper in one hand and the towel over his shoulder, and the grill light made one side of his face look almost green. He said, yeah, that's what people are saying. I asked when, and he shrugged. He just shrugged at me like it was all nothing to him, like I'd asked how old the mayonnaise was. And then he said, it depends on who's saying it. And I hated that, Jack. I hated it so much I could feel my throat closing around the next breath. I said, what does it mean? But he just went back to scraping the grill, and the sound was awful, metal against metal, too sharp. But then he said, men get strange when women leave. Or maybe women leave because the men get strange. I never know which order that goes in. And then he slid the scraper under a strip of burnt cheese and flicked it into the trash, and that was it. And he didn't look shaken up by it, and he didn't even lower his voice as he spoke. He didn't act like he just handed me something heavy and wet and asked me to carry it bare-handed. Or maybe he didn't know he had. Maybe he really was just talking, because that's what people do. People talk. And that's what I keep telling myself. People talk and gossip, and they say weird things, because not everyone understands that words can bruise. But Jack, Denis never told me. He never said Lila left. He let me ask about her like she was still at home being not much for company lately. And he let me say, oh, what about Lila? And when he told me he wasn't leaving me alone, he said, Lila isn't going to mind. Lila isn't going to mind. What, because she's gone? Because she left? Because she couldn't mind? No, I don't like that. I don't even like the idea of the thought. I finished my shift, and I don't really remember the rest of it. I carried plates, and I refilled coffees, and then I smiled at people with my mouth and maybe not even the rest of my face. At some point, I burnt my finger on a mug because I picked it up too fast, and I didn't feel the heat until it already happened. Jack, I keep thinking about Lila, about how long she's been gone, about the mug in Denis's office with the faded blue flowers and the old lipstick stain on the rim, about the way he said she's not much for company lately. As if she were just in another room, like she was still close enough to disappoint him by staying quiet. When I got home, I checked the phone immediately, and I don't know why. Maybe I thought it would be unplugged again. Maybe I was just hoping it would be. But it wasn't. I'm going to call Denis. And I know I shouldn't. I know this is the sort of thing that I should ask face to face in daylight, with both of us standing somewhere public and sensible. But if I wait until morning, I'll spend all night making monsters out of the spaces between things I know and things I don't know. I need to hear him say it. I need to hear Denis make it sound ordinary. I need him to be someone I can trust, Jack. I'll talk to you later. Jack, it's 11:18 p.m. now. I called him. Denis. I called the repair shop first, which was stupid because of course he wasn't there this late. The phone rang, and it rang and rang until it started to feel less like a sound and more of a punishment for being stupid and dramatic. And then I called his house. I almost hung up before the first ring finished, but he answered on the second, and he sounded awake. That bothered me for some reason. I think I wanted him to sound sleepy. Innocent people sound sleepy at 11 o'clock at night, don't they? They answer the phone confused and a little annoyed and say things like, do you know what time it is? But he just said, hello? Clear and quiet, just that one simple word, like he'd been sitting close to the phone waiting. I said, it's Holly. He said, I know. I asked how he knew, and he didn't answer right away. And then he said, who else would call me this late? And that made sense, and I hated that it made sense. There was some static on the line. Not much, but just enough to make his breathing sound further away than it should have been. I asked him why he didn't tell me Lila left. There was no warming up to the question. I just blurted it out, and I think I surprised the both of us. He went quiet, long enough that I actually looked at the phone like I might see his silence sitting on the receiver. And then he said, "Who told you that?" Not, what are you talking about? Or, no, she didn't. Or, oh, I was going to tell you. No, none of those. Just, who told you that? And that's when my stomach did that cold little drop again. I said, "Does it matter?" And he sighed. Not really irritated sounding, more just tired. And I could picture him so clearly it made my chest ache for him. One hand over his eyes, maybe, or rubbing his mouth. Sitting in that dim little kitchen of his, where I've never been, but I can somehow imagine anyway. He said no. No, I guess it doesn't. I asked, "Is it true?" And he said yeah. One little word, plain as a nail. And I waited for more, but he didn't give me anything else. So I said, "When?" And he was quiet again. And I hated how much of the conversation was quiet. He said, "A while ago." And I almost laughed. I really did. I almost laughed. A while ago? As if that meant anything? As if time had been behaving well enough lately for me to accept a vague little offering like a while ago. I said, "What does that mean?" And he said, "It means I didn't want to talk about my wife with you." And that hurt. It shouldn't have hurt. It was a fair thing to say. Maybe even a decent thing to say. There are lines, aren't there? There should be. Granted, I've crossed many of those lines, and so did he. But they're still there. And it still hurt. And then I said, "You let me think she was there." And he said he didn't mean to, but then I said, "You said she wasn't much for company lately." And then he was silent again for a while. And then he said softer, "She wasn't." And I didn't know what to do with that. I still don't. I asked if she left him, and he said yes. And then I asked if she took her things, and he said some. Some? Jack, I hate that word. Some is worse than yes. Some is a drawer left open and a coat still on the hook and a toothbrush by the sink. Some is a person leaving in a way that doesn't quite finish. I asked where she went, and he said, "I don't know." He said it too fast, or maybe not too fast, and maybe I'm just being unfair. Maybe when someone leaves you, you don't really know where they go, and I'm starting to think that's just part of people leaving, Jack. I asked if he had called anyone, her friends or her family, and he said, "She's done this before." And that should have made me feel better, but it didn't. I said, "She left before?" And he said, "Yeah," and his voice sounded different then, flatter, not really angry or sad, but finished and done. I said, "For how long?" And he said, "Holly." Just my name, maybe like a warning or a plea, I couldn't tell, and I don't know which one is worse. And then he said, "I don't want to do this on the phone." I almost asked him to just come over. The words were right there, sitting so close to the edge of my tongue I could taste them. I wanted him here, Jack. God help me, Jack, I wanted him here so badly. I wanted him standing in my kitchen, making the room feel occupied. I wanted his hands on the counter, and I wanted his voice without the static between us. I wanted him to look me in the face and explain everything in a way that made me feel foolish for being afraid. But then I thought about Gordon, and I thought about Lila, and I thought about the mug with the blue flowers and the lipstick. So I said, "Not tonight." And he didn't say anything for a second. And then he said, "All right," and he asked if I was angry. I said no. Then quieter, he said, "I'm worried about you, Holly." And I said I was fine. I almost laughed when I said it. I'm so tired of saying that, Jack. I'm so tired of it that I hung up before either of us could say anything else. And the house felt unbearable after, like the call had filled it with too much air, and now there wasn't any room left for me. I checked the porch again, and there's still no Anka, and I checked the locks, and everything was safe, but everything felt horrible. I think I need to go for a drive. I'm not going to go far. I just need to go out. I need to drive somewhere long enough to get my head quiet. I'll bring you with me, Jack. Jack, it's 12:18 a.m. now, and I'm driving. And I know it sounds stupid, because it is stupid. I should be home. I should be home in bed with the door locked and the windows latched, and I should have my shoes by my bed like a sensible woman expecting the need to run. But I couldn't sit in that house anymore. The quiet was too loud, and that sounds like something someone says when they're trying to be poetic. But I mean it exactly as it is, Jack. The quiet was loud in the walls, it was loud in the sink, in the corners of the rooms where the lamplight didn't reach. It was loud everywhere. I didn't really decide to drive toward the coast. I just kept taking roads that weren't home. I don't even know how far I've driven. The road signs look different at night, or maybe I'm just... What? Jack? What is it doing?
Looks like clear skies tonight with a low of 48. Tomorrow we'll see scattered clouds moving in from the coast, and whoever borrowed the 30th, please return it clean.
Shit. Oh God. Oh my God. Jack, did you hear? No, of course you didn't hear that. You're a tape recorder. You hear what I hear, but you don't. Christ, that was... He said, I'm not making this up. I know I'm not imagining this. I can't be. I know I'm not, because I almost ran myself into a ditch over it. And that feels like a dramatic reaction to something that I apparently imagined. I should turn off the radio. I should turn off the radio. This is insane. I'm being insane. It was a radio bit, maybe, right? Right? It's just a bit. It was one of those strange local station things. Maybe they said the 30th like a birthday or an anniversary or...
You are listening to KCBN, keeping Cedar Bend awake whether it likes it or not.
Oh, absolutely not. There. Okay. No, I don't like that. I don't like that at all. Oh God, Jack, the car is too quiet now, and that's somehow worse. Of course it's worse. I should turn around. I know I should. I should go home and lock the door and pretend I never heard that and sleep like a normal person with normal problems and normal ankles and a normal mind. But I am closer to the coast now than I am to home. I'll talk to you when I get there, Jack. Jack, it's 12:52 a.m. I'm at the beach, and I don't know what I expected. That's not true. I think I expected it to help. That sounds stupid now that I'm standing here with my coat wrapped tight around me and sand already in my shoes. But I thought the ocean would feel bigger than all of this. Bigger than Cedar Bend, and bigger than Denis, and bigger than missing days and missing wives and strange men that say strange things in parking lots. I thought if I stood in front of something this enormous, maybe my life would feel smaller in a comforting way. But it doesn't. The ocean is too loud, and the water just sounds close, even though the tide is far out. I can see all this dark, wet sand stretching between me and the edge of the surf, smooth and shining like something skinned. The waves are breaking way out there, but the sound is right here. The sound's at my feet and in my teeth, and the river feels like something that knows my name, but the ocean feels like something too old to need it. There are no seagulls, and I know it's night, but still there should be something. Birds or bugs or people parked in cars doing things they shouldn't. Maybe some drunk teenagers throwing bottles or someone's dog barking at the dark. Because dogs are smarter than us and know when the dark deserves to be barked at. But there's nothing, Jack. Just water and sand. I walk down from the pull-off with my flashlight from the glove compartment. The batteries are weak, so the lights keep yellowing at the edges, making everything look sickly. There are flowers in the sand, Jack. I don't know why. There's not many. There's just a few here and there. Wildflowers like ones around the deer. They're stuck upside down in the wet sand, the stems in the air and their petals buried. I should pull one out. No, I shouldn't pull one out. I'm learning, maybe, or maybe I'm getting worse. There are footprints too, Jack. At least I think they're footprints. They start at the waterline and come up the beach a little ways and then stop. There's no trail going back, and there's no person. Just these dark impressions in the sand that don't look right. They're too far apart, maybe even too deep, like whoever made them was very heavy or very tired, or maybe even didn't quite understand how walking's supposed to work. I'm not going closer. I'm saying that for your benefit and mine, Jack. I am not going closer. There's something pale near the surf. I think it's driftwood, or probably just a plastic bag. But the problem with probably is that it leaves too much room For a second I thought it was a person, and my mind wanted me to think it was Lila. I don't even know what Lila looks like well enough for that. I've seen her, obviously. Cedar Bend is too small not to see everyone eventually, but she's one of those women I never really looked at because looking felt rude. Because she was attached to Denis, and looking at her felt wrong, like I was violating her. She had dark hair, I think, or light brown, or maybe I'm making that up. Isn't that awful? To be frightened for a woman and not even know what her face looked like correctly? The pale thing moved. No, it didn't. The water moved around it, and that's different. I'm going to walk back to the car. I shouldn't be here. I'm going home, Jack. Jack, the radio in my car just turned on. I'm not in the car, Jack. I'm 10 feet away from it. Maybe I left it on. No, I turned it off. I know I turned it off. It's that same song. It's that old song, Jack. I hear it through the closed doors. That's not possible. The keys are in my pocket, Jack, and now they are in my hand. The keys are in my hand.
There you are. For those of you driving home tonight, please remember to check your back seat, your mirrors, and shape your absence left behind. KCBN. We keep what keeps you.
Jack, I'm leaving right now. Jack, it's 1:34 a.m. and I am driving home. I am so close to home. I'm almost there. I don't want to talk, but I think if I stop talking any longer, I'll start hearing the radio even though it's been off, so I am talking. The road looks different at night, and I know that sounds ridiculous. I know it's the same road. It's the same reflective lights shining up like animals' eyes with headlights hitting them. But everything looks like it's been moved a little. Not enough to get lost, just enough to make home feel less guaranteed. I passed by the deer again, the one with the flowers. I slowed down even though I didn't mean to. The deer is still there. The flowers are still upside down, but now there are more of them, and I know there are. There was maybe 12 this afternoon, maybe 15. Now there are dozens all around it, in the ditch and on the shoulder, and some stuck in the cracks of the pavement, the stems up and the petals down, like something is blooming wrong from the road. One of them was right in the middle of my lane, a little white flower, and I drove over it. I did not swerve, Jack, and I am proud of that, maybe. Or maybe I am ashamed. I don't know. I need to go home, and I need Anka to be on the porch, and I know that's silly. I know a cat is not an answer to these problems, but I need him there. I need one living thing to look at me like I am being dramatic. I'll talk to you when I'm home, Jack. Jack, it's 1:58 a.m. and I am home, and Anka is here. He's on the porch. He's sitting right in front of the door like he has been here waiting for me, and I was so relieved when I saw him that I almost started crying when I turned off the car. And I am not proud of that. I got out and I said his name like an idiot, and he looked at me with that little flat cat face, like he couldn't imagine why I'd be so emotional about his schedule, and I dropped the keys on the porch. That's how badly I was shaking, Jack. But I bent down to pick them up, and Anka came over and rubbed against my leg, and Jack, he had sand in his fur. Not dirt, and it wasn't dust, it was sand. I felt it under my fingers when I touched his back. Little gritty pieces caught in the fur near his shoulders and more on his paws. Damp sand was stuck between his little toes, and I stood there with my hand on him and my mouth open like I had forgotten what words were for. He wasn't with me. He was not in my car or at the beach. He was gone all day, Jack. He purred, that deep, pleased little engine sound, like he'd done something good, and I kept thinking about Lila. And I keep thinking about Denis saying she took some of her things. Just some. And I keep thinking about that mug in his office. And I keep thinking that maybe he... No, I am not saying that. Not tonight. I don't want to. I don't. Jack, I need to go to bed.